Upchuck Summer by Joel L. Schwartz, 12th. With a little over 2 weeks left to go in the season, everyone was waiting for Olympics to begin. We all knew the counselors were dividing the campers into blue and red teams, which would compete in all types of events for 1 week. This year, all the kids in my bunk were eligible to be chosen as camper captain of a team. When I was a 7-year-old first-year camper, I dreamed of being a captain leading my team on to victory. Last year at this time, everybody, even some of the counselors, had said, "Richie, next year is your year to be captain." I would hang my head and feel sort of embarrassed whenever they said it. But deep inside, I really wished it would come true. Sometimes, during a boring math class, I would picture myself running alongside the other camper captains, holding high in my hand the flaming torch that would light the fire to start the games. Everyone in camp would be cheering, "Richie, Richie, Richie." "Richie, what's the answer to number 6? Mr. Singer, my math teacher, would interrupt. "Richie, Richie, Richie." I would raise both hands, fists clenched to the sky, and then the index finger of my right hand would go up. My team was number 1. I was number 1. Number 1, I would say. "The answer to number 1, Mr. Singer? No, number 6, Mr. Singer would say in disgust. But that was only a memory, and now the real thing was about to happen. I hoped. I said I hoped because I was afraid to say I would definitely, for fear it would not come true. I knew the Olympics had to start on either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, and so did the people that were running the camp. So each year they would try to do things to make us think it would start and then tell us it was a fake out. I was sure it would start at the all-camp swim meet on Monday. I told Fred, "Just you wait." No sooner the words come out of my mouth than there was a tremendous explosion of counselors dressed as frog. Then there was a tremendous explosion, and frogmen dressed as counselors, and counselors dressed as frogmen came up out of the lake. Soon they were joined by 4 other counselors dressed as soldiers. They ran around us, shouting and yelling. Then someone turned on the PA system, and a deep voice said, "Welcome to the Red and Blue 1980 Olympics. This year promises to be the biggest and best Olympics ever. I know everyone has been waiting for the announcement of the camper captains." I took a deep breath and tried to swallow a big lump that had formed in my throat. "The camper captains are fake out, fake out, fake out. Damn it," I muttered. Why do they play games like that? Well, if it wasn't starting at the swim meet, I knew exactly when it would start. It would start tonight at evening activity. I could hardly eat my dinner that night. In just 2 hours, I would be I hoped to be captain. When they called us to line up for evening activity, I was the first one out. I paced nervously until the rest of the guys came. Only a few more minutes. The head counselor blew his whistle and everybody quieted down. He began to make a few announcements. When it happened for real, fireworks lit up the sky, spelling out Olympics 1980. Counselors, faces painted in red and blue, were running around, throwing papers in the air. Sirens and bells rang over the PA system, and we were all told to go to the rec hall and find out what teams we were on. I ran as fast as I could, yelling and screaming as I flew by everyone. When I got to the rec hall, I saw that the outside was plastered with paper telling each camper which team they were on. I was on the red team with Fred, while John and Marty were on the blue. Once inside, we separated. The red on the left side of the rec hall, the blue on the right. My heart pounded wildly. The head counselor stood up in front of the teams and waited for silence. "The camper captains for this year are blue team, Amy Johnson and John Miller. The red team, Susan Simon and Fred." Everyone cheered and shouted. The captains came forward to get their torches. I patted Fred on the back as he ran by, and I wished him luck. Inside, I felt lousy. I wanted to cry and scream out, "Not fair! I should have been picked!" I wanted to kick over a bench and break a window, but instead I followed my team. We ran behind the camper captains, who were on their way with torch in hand to start Olympics. I really wasn't running very fast, and eventually almost everybody was ahead of me. I thought of turning around and running in the opposite direction. I stopped. "You should have been picked for captain." "Yeah, I should have been captain." I turned around. It was Robbie and Sally. What a great brother and sister. "You were robbed," said Robbie. "Yeah, you were robbed," echoed Sally. "I don't care who they picked. I still consider you the captain." "Right, I agree with Robbie. You're our captain." I put my arms around them and gave both a hug. "They're really not that bad." Come on, I said, grabbing their hands. Let's catch up to the team. That night I could not fall asleep. This was probably the worst day of my life. It was worse than the time I was sick on my 10th birthday and the party had to be canceled. It was worse than the time I flunked my first test and had to take it home for my parents to sign. It was even worse than not getting elected president of my 7th grade homeroom. At least I would have a chance to run for president in 8th grade, but the chance to be camper captain was gone forever. I'm just as good as Fred, I thought. In fact, I'm a better athlete. Why wasn't I picked? It wasn't fair. I could feel myself getting angry all over again. Then I don't know why, I began to have a conversation with God, to myself, of course. Why are you doing all this to me this year? You almost didn't let me get the bed I wanted. And you put me in right field, and you messed things up with me and the girls, and you let me get scared instead of Chuck. Did I do something wrong? Have I been bad? Is it something I said? Is it because I beat up my brother 2 weeks before camp? It was really his fault for coming into my room. Is it because I asked Paul for some answers on the 9 weeks test his class took before mine? I wasn't cheating. I was just checking things. Or was it because I called Chuck a nerd? It's not my fault you made him a nerd. Well, then what is it? What have I done for you to be so mean? Huh? Answer. Okay, be like that. Don't answer. See if I care. Damn it. It ain't fair. It just ain't. It just isn't. I don't think I slept a wink that night. The next day, before the first events began, each captain called a team meeting. Susan and Fred stood up on benches in front of everyone and began to lead cheers. I sat by myself in the back, off to one side. There was nothing for me to cheer about. I guess I owe you an explanation. I looked up. It was Mike. I looked down. Come outside with me for a moment. I wanted to say no or get lost, but I followed him outside instead. As he sat down on the ground, he motioned for me to sit beside him. I sat down, but not that close. I stared at the ground. I guess you're wondering why you weren't picked to be captain. I continued to stare at the ground. If we just went on your past record at camp, there wouldn't have been any question. But this year, you are not a team person. You are a Richie-only person. Huh? I said, looking up only for a moment. Remember when you didn't want to play right field? The only thing you were interested in was, that's not true. Right field is only for what? Said Mike sternly. Nothing, I said, and again I looked at the ground. See, that's what I mean. You haven't let Chuck alone for 1 minute the whole season. I'm not the only one. The other guys do it too. But I expect more from you. You used to be a leader. People used to follow you instead of, are you finished? I snapped. I didn't wait to hear Mike's answer. I got up and walked back to the rec hall. The cheers were still in progress, so I returned to my seat in the corner. Mike's words repeated themselves over and over again. You are a Richie-only person, not a team person. You used to be a leader. I expected more from you. You haven't let Chuck alone. You are a Richie-only person. When the cheers were over, I followed the team out of the rec hall. Mike was waiting outside the door. I pretended not to see him. I expected more from you. You used to be a leader. I am a leader, I thought. I expected more. I'm going to score so many points you'll wish you made me captain. I'll show you, Mike. You're wrong, I thought. The first event I was involved in was a swim meet. I was a pretty good swimmer, so I got to participate in 3 events, the 50-yard butterfly stroke, the 50-yard relay, and the diving. I was expected to win all 3, but I lost the butterfly race by inches, had a false start that disqualified the relay team, and had awful form in most of my dives. I argued a little over the false start call, but there was nothing I could say about it. But there was nothing I could say about the other 2 events. On the second day of the competition, our basketball team was ahead by 1 point with less than 35 seconds to go in the game. All we had to do was hold on to the ball, but somehow I let a pass from Fred slip between my fingers and go out of bounds. To make matters worse, on the next play, I fouled John as he was driving into the basket, and he made both foul shots, giving the game to Blue by 1 point. Damn it, Richie, yelled Fred. The ball was right in your hands. What happened? It just slipped out, Fred. I tried. Fred gave me a you lost the game look and walked away. The afternoon of the 4th day, we had our baseball game, and I was to play shortstop. I felt really good, and I was determined to make up for my poor showing so far. The first inning was scoreless, but in the bottom half of the second, the blue team got 3 consecutive hits. With the bases loaded, a perfect double play ground ball came to me. I ran toward it, trying to pick it up on a short hop, but the ball slid under my glove and into left field, letting 2 runs score. The blue team scored one more run on a long fly ball, and I was glad to see that inning end. Fred pulled me aside on the bench when we got in. "Hey, Richie, what the hell is the matter with you?" "The ball took a bad hop, Fred. It wasn't my fault." "Bad hop my eye. You misplayed it." "I'd like to see you do better," I snapped back. "I am doing better," he replied and walked away. That inning, I struck out, and I did it again in the fourth and the sixth. Nevertheless, our team was able to score 4 runs, and we were leading 4-3 in the last half of the seventh inning. After the first 2 blue members made ours, the next 3 got on base. I was a little worried that they might score the winning runs until I saw that the next batter was Chuck. We've got this game in the bag. I watched Chuck swing wildly at 2 pitches that were out of the strike zone. For some reason, he didn't swing at the next 3 pitches, so the count ran 3-2. "Just lob it in," I said. "We'll get it." The next pitch was right down the center of the plate. Chuck uppercut it wildly, causing the ball to go sky high between short and third. "I got it," I yelled to Fred. "No, I got it," yelled Fred. "Stay away, Richie." "It's mine, Fred. I called it." By now, Fred and I were face to face, and as we crashed into each other, we lost our balance and fell to the ground a split second before the ball did. In the confusion, two runs scored, and we lost 5-4. "I told you I had it," yelled Fred. "It was mine all the way." "The shortstop is supposed to call the play," I yelled back. "I had it. It was mine." "You're a nerd, Richie. That's the second game you lost for our team. I should have put you in right field." "Then why didn't you? Maybe I will next time. You've changed, Richie. You're a real loser now." The word loser rang in my head. Nobody calls me a loser and gets away with it. "Come over here and say that," I said. Fred started toward me, but we were quickly separated by our bunkmates. Just because he's the captain, he thinks he's hot stuff. Well, he ain't. When I got back to the bunk, Fred was already lying down on his bed. I lay down on my bed and didn't look in his direction. And when it looked as if he were about to talk to me, I turned my back on him and closed my eyes. After dinner, Mike pulled me aside. "I want to talk to you," he said. "Again? I heard what you said the other day. You never let me finish." "Well, finish it then, not here. I want to do this where we can be alone." We walked up to the ball field, and he motioned for me to sit on the bleachers. "I'd rather stand," I said. "Suit yourself," said Mike. "I watched you play ball today. You seem to be having a tough time." "Did you see the grounder in the second inning?" Mike nodded. "It hit a rut in the field and slid under my glove. If it wasn't for that, I would have had a double play." "Yeah, it was a tough play." "What about the fly ball? Wasn't it mine? Didn't Fred try to hog it?" Mike listened, but he didn't answer. Instead, he put his arm around me and said, "No, Richie, it was Fred's ball." I brushed Mike's hand off my shoulder and started to walk away. "Wait, let me finish," said Mike. I didn't want to stay. Couldn't Mike see he was making matters worse? First, I wasn't picked for captain, and now everything was going wrong. "Richie, in all the years I've known you and watched you play in camp, I've never seen you choke in a pressure situation. This week you've done it 3 times. In the bunk, you're snapping at everybody and bossing people around. It's just not like you. Everybody's entitled to a bad game or 2. I'll do better tomorrow." "I really believe you'll try to do better tomorrow, just as you gave it your all today, but that's not the issue," Mike said. "Then what is?" I asked. "I think you're running away from your feelings." "What are you talking about?" "I think you're upset over the fact you weren't chosen captain and Fred was. And I also think you're angry at me for what I said to you the other day." I wanted to look Mike straight in the eye and deny what he said, but I felt my eyes beginning to get wet as I hung my head and said nothing. Thoughts flew around in my brain like several super balls bouncing off a wall. I didn't have a false start in the swimming meet. I should have been picked. Fred's pass was bad and the ball was slippery. I feel angry, mad, furious. Damn it, shit! Fred used to be my friend. No one in the bunk likes me anymore. Why wasn't I picked? This is the worst summer I ever had. I'm never coming back to camp again. I am a leader. I'm not the only one that ever picked on Chuck. I'm better than Fred. How can you be angry at your best friend? How can you be angry at the counselor you looked up to? Damn it, damn it, damn it!" We both stood there for what seemed to be an eternity. Mike got up and put his arm around me again, and we walked back to the bunk. Just before we walked in the door, I wanted to say something to Mike, but nothing came out. Mike smiled and squeezed my arm. I still felt a little mad. And that is the end of chapter 12.